All right, let's start this example assuming that this country is operating with free trade. So there are no tariffs, there are no quotas. In that case, under our assumption that the country is small relative to the world, they're just a price taker. So if they are operating with free trade, the price for a shirt in this country is just equal to the world price, or in this case, $2. So at that price, we know, where does that price hit the demand curve? That tells us how many shirts consumers want to buy. 90 shirts. It also tells us, if we look at the supply curve, where the price hits the supply curve, how many shirts domestic producers are willing to produce at that low price of $2, which is 20. So if U.S. consumers are wanting to buy 90 shirts and U.S. producers are only willing to produce 20, then this gap between 90 and 20 are our imports under free trade. So that's just 90 minus 20, which equals 70. Now, though, let's assume that the shirt lobby in this country goes to Congress and lobbies for a tariff to protect their domestic industry. And let's say that the legislative body agrees and passes a law that puts a $2 tax per shirt. If there's $2 tariff. If there's now a $2 tariff per shirt, then the price of the shirt goes from $2 up to $4. So at this new higher price, U.S. consumers want to purchase less. Now they just want to buy 80 instead of the previous 90. And U.S. producers are willing to produce more because the price is now higher. They're willing to produce 40. So what are imports now that we have a tariff? Well, it's just 80 minus 40, which equals 40. So our imports have fallen 70 in the previous case when we had free trade. Now we're only importing 40 shirts from abroad at this new higher price of $4, which is the $2 world price plus the $2 tariff. So now let's talk about who benefits and who loses. And the easiest way to look at this, I think, is to kind of label our different areas here. So we have area A, which is this trapezoid right here, area B, that triangle, area C there, and area D. Okay, so now we have these areas labeled A, B, C, D. Let's calculate each one. The hardest one here to calculate is area A because it's a trapezoid, right? It has this rectangular piece right here and this triangular piece right there. But the easiest way to calculate that is just break it into those two pieces, right? We have area of A, which is some rectangle plus this triangle. So we just have to remember our formulas for area of different shapes. A is a rectangle. Rectangles are simple. That's just length times width. So how tall is that? Well, it goes from 4 to 2, so it has a height of 2. And how wide is it? Well, right, we're starting here. For A, we're starting here at 0, and it goes up to 20, so it has that length of 20. All right, so that is our rectangle. For our triangle, remember we always have to put a 1/2 for the triangle. What's the height of the triangle? Well, it has that same height of the tariff size, so that's 2. And then what's its base in this case, like how wide it is? Well, remember it starts here at 20. How far does that triangle go? It goes up to 40, so that's a gap of 20. So now we just have to do this problem, right? So what's 2 times 20? What's our area? So remember this is for our triangle. 2 times 20 is the area of the rectangle. That's 40. Now 1/2 times 2 cancel out, leaving us with 20. And so area A is $60. And what does area A represent? Well, think about, right, what is this area here? It's this added producer surplus, okay? It's the added producer surplus in this case. Remember, what's producer surplus? It's the area below price and above the supply curve. Under free trade, U.S. producers just had this much producer surplus down here, below 2 and above the supply curve. Now it's the area below 4 and above the supply curve, which is essentially that area A. It's exactly that area A. So this is the gain in producer surplus. So now we know how much better U.S. producers are, how much better off U.S. producers are in the presence of this tariff, right? They're benefiting from this higher price, they're producing more. We also know that the government benefits through tax revenues. So which area of our graph demonstrates how much tax revenue is generated, it's this rectangle right here. All right. Remember, this gap from 40 to 80 is the amount of imports, and the height of that rectangle is the size of the tariff. They're making $2 per tariff. Sorry, $2 per unit imported, so the total revenue is just $2 times the number of imports. So let's calculate the area of C. It's just a rectangle, so we just have to do that length times width. The height here is 2, the size of the tariff. The length in this case is the amount of imports, 40, so the government is generating $80 in revenue in this case. So that's how much better off the government is. But we have these two extra pieces, B and D. So if you remember from class, what do each of these represent? Well, B represents value of wasted resources. This is an area here that's lost, that the economy essentially loses because it is more expensive to produce this good in the U.S. than in another country. So let's calculate this area, right? This is showing U.S. costs. This domestic supply curve is U.S. costs. Here are the world costs. So this area right here, B, shows basically the total value of extra cost that we're paying to produce the good here rather than allowing it to be produced in another country. So this is once again a triangle, so we have to remember it's 1/2. How tall is this triangle? Well, it's our tariff, right? Notice that's been a part of everything, right? We've basically shifted the price from 2 to 4, so that $2 is showing up in all these calculations. And then, what's the base in this case? Well, the triangle starts here at 20, and it ends here at 40, so that is 20, right? That's basically, there are 20 units being produced in the U.S. that we would not be producing otherwise. This is that increase in U.S. production. So if I cancel the 2's, I'm left with a value of wasted resources of 20. All right, so we have one area left to talk about. That's our area over here, D, this last triangle. If you remember from class, that area is our lost gains from trade. These are consumers, right? There were, at the free trade price, 90 consumers bought the good. At the tariff price, only 80 purchased the goods. So we have 10 consumers who are no longer getting this product. So once again, it's a triangle. We want to calculate that total area, so we have to remember our formula. Since it's a triangle, it's 1/2. What's our height? Like everything else, it's been $2, right? That's our tariff. And then what's our base? Well, right, our triangle starts here at 80. It ends here at 90. Those are the 10 consumers who are no longer buying the product who would have bought it before. So that's 10. Cancel out the 2's, and we get $10 in lost gains from trade. So now we've broken it down. We know how much producers benefited, how much the government benefited in tax revenue. We figured out our value of wasted resources, our lost gains from trade. If you added all of those up, A plus B plus C plus D, this would equal lost consumer surplus. That entire area, A plus B plus C plus D, shows us how much worse consumers are, how much worse off they are after the tariff than before, right? So we know consumers lose this very large amount from, it's A, B, C, and D, because remember, consumer surplus is the area above price and below demand, so it goes from this big triangle above 2 to this smaller triangle. So A, B, C, D represents how much worse off they are. We've calculated each of those separately. We've talked about each of those pieces, A, B, C, and D, separately. Adding them all together tells you how much worse off consumers are under the tariff than they would be in the case of free trade.